And thank you all for joining today. Really appreciate it and hope that I can give you a little bit of insight on some of the things that we're hearing so far from students, as well as some of the supports that we've been trying to put into place. I'd also love to, at some point, if you want to drop a note into the text chat, love to hear things that you might be hearing or seeing that we across campus should be developing additional supports for, or at least trying to do that. This is obviously for all of us a very challenging time, and I applaud each of you for the very quick amount of time that you were able to move your course over into a virtual or non-face-to-face format, recognizing the difficulty and the challenge in that. Even as I have been having conversations with students and watching some of their concerns and comments, really trying to stress to them that in many cases, for many of us, we're learning together. So the students are learning and are frustrated and anxious, and I can imagine that for you, this process may have been that way as well, particularly if this is the first time that you're having to transition to some of these technologies. So I applaud your efforts and certainly am available to support you as well if there's anything that I can do to support you. I hope that you've had a chance on the faculty development site to take a look at the Keep Teaching page and also the Keep Learning page. That's a page that you may have seen if you've seen any of the messages that have gone out to students. The Keep Learning site that Stephanie's putting up in the sidebar, and Keep Teaching. Keep Learning is really a resource for students. And so if you do have students who are searching for additional support, this is another place that they can find that information. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the information that you can find there as we go along here. So yesterday, about maybe 5:15, we actually sent out a survey to students. It's our NIU Tech survey. Ironically, we know that students who don't have access to tech will not probably even see that survey. And so we're trying to do some other things to get to reach out to those students as well. But one of the things that I did for this presentation was I wanted to share with you some of the things that we're hearing from students, the fears that they have and the concerns that they have that might be helpful for you as instructors and educators and faculty as you're evolving your course over the course of these next couple of weeks or several weeks. So in this survey, we asked a number of questions, and the goal really was to try and better understand what students' needs are and where we might be able to help support them a little bit better. And so over the next couple of weeks, you may even be hearing from your associate deans or your deans, as we did give students an opportunity to indicate who they were and a contact number or email address if they wanted someone to follow up with them specifically. So we'll be sharing that information with the colleges as well for students who are particularly distressed. But what are students finding useful? So there's two ways that I'm gathering this information. One is through the survey that we sent out. The second is I have the luxury of being a part of the Class of 2023 Facebook page, which I can tell you is the joy of my life right now as I'm watching some of the interesting comments that our students have been making along the way. But you know, one of the things that I sense, the major undertone that I sense is fear, and so I thought it would be helpful to share some of the things that students are saying through that site. So the first is that faculty, one thing that students are saying is useful to them at this time is when they are hearing regularly from their faculty, and faculty are engaged in providing clear guidelines. In particular, as we transition to this non-face-to-face, a lot of students are just, even though the syllabi might be very similar, it's brand new to them, and so they are really looking for clear guidelines. And as I suspected, because you all have this relationships with students, some of the students indicated that this shift has been hard, mostly because they appreciated the regular contact that they have as faculty. So you know, Ted, you asked the question in the chat box about the asynchronous meetings and connecting with your students, and that's, they are looking to have that contact for sure with you along the way. And so many are really struggling to navigate this new modality. And even if some things might seem obvious, like the syllabi or the information that you've provided, their level of anxiety may be clouding their ability to see the obvious right now. So as much as you possibly can, and I even recommend things like, if you have kids or younger folks at home, ask them to take a look at things before you post them, see what kind of questions they might ask that are questions that are different than the ones that you might have had as you were drafting instructions for students, particularly if this is a new modality for them. Students are wanting to stay connected to their peers, so they've indicated interest and excitement over discussion rooms, being able to have discussion about topics. In some cases, I know faculty have been, I'm going to just close this email so it doesn't distract. In some case, I know that faculty have also been hosting video discussions and video chats, and many students have indicated that they have enjoyed that as well. It's a new way for them to stay connected, sort of. I mean, it's actually probably more the way that they connect in their day-to-day life. So we sometimes make assumptions. I know we often say that millennials and Gen Zs are more technology savvy, but they're technology savvy toward the things that they are interested in. And so if their cell phone and Instagram are the things that they're interested in, those are the things that they know well. And then some of these other modalities are just very different for them. Accessing critical technology and software. So if you happen, now I'll say this in one of the slides here, but there are some technologies and software that students seem to be having trouble with, particularly if they don't have easy access to it, if it's a software that needs to be purchased, or that may not be commonly posted or commonly included in a tech pack on a computer. This is something that students, they're finding useful that they have access when they do have access, but it's also been one of the challenges that we're seeing. Blackboard, I think, is most often cited by students as a useful tool for them, because many of them are familiar with it because you've been using it in classes already, even beyond this transition. And then lastly, the office hours and regular follow-up. So many students are indicating that their biggest concern is that if they have questions, they won't have the ability to reach you, and they won't have or they won't know how to reach you and ask those questions in the same way that they could have face-to-face. So even if you have opportunities to offer office hours where you're online at certain periods, maybe spreading those periods out for students who might have questions, that could go far in alleviating some of the fears that students are expressing. So other things students are saying here, no, this is not what, okay. Other issues that students are bringing up in particular, hold on, I'm sorry, I think I skipped. Yeah, other things that students are saying. You know, again, going back to this fear, and really when you think about even some of the choice words that I've had the opportunity to hear students use in the chat through Facebook, underlying that is fear. They are saying that this virtual learning or this non-face-to-face learning is something that they didn't sign up for, really upset about, and I think I would guess that we all probably feel that way to some extent, unless this was a modality that we chose. Oh, that's great. Oh, I love that, Ted. Thank you for sharing that, the use of GroupMe for each class, so students can get a hold of you quickly. And I think that's important. They're used to having a little more contact and ability to reach you, and so thank you for doing that. Too many platforms. So you may be using Blackboard, say, in your course, but there are, you know, students are taking 3, 4, 5 other classes in addition to. What I'm hearing is that students are getting confused by the Blackboard and Adobe and other kinds of platforms that are being used for their classes. So not that thing that you particularly can do something about, but being conscious and aware of the fact that students may be using a familiar tool in your class, but using a very unfamiliar tool in another class, and that's increasing their anxiety. So Wi-Fi, this is really, I think this is something that we all were really concerned about, and we're seeing that there are some students who absolutely don't have access to Wi-Fi. And even though Comcast, I don't know if you all have noticed or seen any information about this, but Xfinity did open up all of their hotspots so that it's free access to anyone who is close to an Xfinity hotspot. And although there are tons of them around, we're seeing even students in our rural areas and some other areas that aren't able to access that Wi-Fi. And so they're having to use cellular data to help them. So and it can mean that some of your students may be spending only so much time online because if they have data plans that require either them to pay or they don't have the ability to use a hotspot, then this can be challenging for them. In the case where I've had an opportunity to talk to a couple of students, in this case, we have had, it has been the students working directly with each faculty member to see if there are other ways to get that content and that information to the student so that they are able to successfully complete the course, albeit not the most, I'm sure not the most preferred way, but there may be some students that are in that situation. I want to, and you may have already talked to some of them, so I want to alert you to that as an issue that students are bringing up. Students are, concerned about lectures that are given at possible times. So if you are doing a lecture at a particular time, even if it's the time that the class typically was meeting, many of our students have children and have other things going on around them. You all, I know, very similarly may have children and the dog and everyone else are running around in the background. And so in some cases, students are finding it difficult to meet at certain times. So where possible, where you can make options available for students to access that material afterwards. If you record a class session through Collaborate and allow students to jump in at a certain time, but if they can't, you have recorded it and made it available to them. That's another tip that I would like to throw out there. And then again, going back to the Wi-Fi and technology issues, the survey that so far we've seen is that most students are using laptops or computers. We do have some students who are using tablets, which make it very difficult for some things. Chromebooks, which don't allow you to do some of the things that you would typically be able to do on a regular computer. So depending upon that limited technology that the students have, they may or may not be able to access the information. And it's sometimes, and I do this the same. I make assumptions that everyone has access to the same things that I may have access to, and so I think that is something just to be very conscious of and aware of. So Adobe Suite seems to be the software that students are most challenged by, either because they haven't had to use it or it's not loaded. They don't have access to it. So this has been cited by a number of students, particularly in CVP&A. So the way that some of the courses are shifting in CVP&A seem to be using Adobe much more. And these are sometimes software tools that students may have had access to at a computer lab here on campus, but now they don't have that access to it. So if there are opportunities to talk with your chairs or associate deans about particular software and whether there might be a way to give students access for free, those are things that I might suggest in cases like this. I'll give you an example. I had a student who emailed me, and I even shared with her some resources that were very limited in cost, and she shot back a note to me, rightfully so, saying that her family can't work, at this time, and paying for anything, even something as small as $10, is something that would create a hardship for her and her family. And so obviously that breaks my heart to hear, and but knowing that those are the realities that some students are dealing with. Microsoft Office seems like something that most of us have on our computers at this point, and even through Office 365 have access to. Students may not even know if some of those tools are actually readily available to them. And so if you know, if you provide additional instructions for them for other software that you might be using, for them to be able to access, even if it's a remote access. In some cases, engineering and math software does have remote access that students can get to, making sure that they are getting access to that information. And then other areas, other things that students are speaking to are more specific. So SolidWorks Lockdown Browser, which basically is a browser that ensures that students aren't cheating on exams. That may be a useful tool for us on our end to manage that, but it may be causing, it is causing some challenges for students. So these are things that I think just are important to think about as you're developing those things. Some of this transition is a transition of trust. Knowing students now have sort of open access to everything at this point, and I recognize how challenging that can be. But as we are sort of supporting this transition for them as well, I think thinking about how some of this requires us to trust that students will do what they need to do, and providing the tools for them to do that. So one suggestion that I have, particularly using Blackboard Collaborate. So I think Blackboard Collaborate is great, and it was highlighted by many students as the best tool that they're using so far. The one issue that has been brought up time and time again is the lag, sometimes in the video and audio. What I have found is that oftentimes if you turn off the video, that it will help to reduce some of that lag. So that may or may not be an issue, but pay attention to that if you're seeing that with students. We did the survey to all students, but it might even be helpful as you go through your course to do a quick check-in with students, asking them what kinds of things they might be struggling with. And then, of course, faculty development and Do It and others are available to help support you through those kinds of things if they're having trouble, particularly with Collaborate. All right. So again, remembering that all students are not don't have access, and I want to encourage you to be flexible and communicate regularly to your students. There are the tools, obviously, that already exist. There may be other tools that you can allow students to get access to, or you can provide free resources for, that I encourage you to do. If there's software needs that you're finding, I definitely encourage you to talk with your chairs or your deans to ensure that their students will have access to that. Even if a software is $100 or $50, that still can create a hardship for a student who may not have the ability to pay that. And so finding out if there are other ways that students can access that would be really important. Some of the students are talking about bandwidth as well as the use of cellular data, particularly if they're using their cell phones as their hotspot. So thinking about that as you're developing things will be important. If students are having technical issues at this point, on the Keep Learning site, you will see a link to this. But if students have technological issues, they can contact the service desk at servicedesk@niu.edu. And you see the phone number there, 815-753-8100. They are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and available to help students if they have technological issues. I recently heard that a number of students were having problems with getting locked out, probably their passwords reset. And this is right now what I think Do It is trying to manage and make sure that students have the ability to get into the systems that they need to get into. For academic concerns, we do recognize that students right now, they don't have access in the same way. Obviously, they can't go and sit in front of a tutor. But we do, through Access Tutoring and through the Writing Center, have now shifted to online tutoring options. And so they can work with students, and they're actually using Microsoft Teams or Blackboard Collaborate to work with students if they are having concerns in a class. The College of Engineering and Engineering Technology also is offering tutoring support online virtually. And they also have a number of 5-minute solutions on the SEAT website. These are for topics that are difficult but chunked into smaller lessons within 5 minutes, and they're particularly useful for STEM students in the STEM fields.
So everyone, if you can hear me, hold on for just a moment. It looks like Renique has lost connection. So we'll just pause for a minute while we give her a chance to reconnect. These sorts of tech issues happen all the time when you're working with technology.
Well, as you can see, I just experienced probably what the students are experiencing. My apologies for that. But yes, this is exactly the kind of thing that I think can be sometimes challenging. So making things available that students can access even after a live session will be important. If you have documents for them to read, things that they can download and bring onto their devices, really, really important. Students who have concern, so there's 3 things in your class right now. You may notice that students aren't logging into Blackboard. You should be able to on Blackboard you can see whether a student has in the gradebook. I know you can see whether a student's when their last access. What kind of help can the service desk provide for students with access issues? So Ted, the first thing I would say is that the students, when they contact Do It will go through a series of questions with them to identify exactly what their service issues might be, and then figure out the path to support. So in the case where students are getting locked out, then they'll be able to help the students with that issue. But it could be what they can't help students with is getting access to Wi-Fi. So right now, the Wi-Fi issue is one that we're trying to resolve. Do It has been working to try and purchase some hotspots through T-Mobile that we can make available to students. We're also working on trying to get some emergency funding available for students to help support some of these issues. But the technological issues that Do It are likely able to help with if students can't access some of the apps, if they're having trouble getting into Blackboard or navigating some of the technology, they can contact Do It for those questions. If you are concerned with a student's activity level, for example, if you see that a student hasn't logged in for a while or they're not turning in assignments consistently, NIU Navigate, which is our platform that we use for advising and retention, has an option to submit an ad hoc alert, which is an immediate alert if you find that students you're concerned about students. So Stephanie has been so kind as to put a link on Blackboard so that you can access that immediately through Blackboard, and it will take you directly to the login for Navigate. Everybody, all faculty have access now to Navigate to log in and issue an alert. This is different than if you were part of a progress report campaign. This is different in that we're not sending you a roster list. This is just available for you if you have students who you are really concerned about and you want someone to reach out to them. When you submit an alert, that alert immediately tells their academic advisor that there's an issue so that they can reach out to the student. There's 3 reasons that you can indicate in that alert. One is that a student has not logged in. So if you have students who you're seeing in the gradebook, they haven't logged in, that would be the alert reason that you would choose. The second would be if a student needs academic support. So if you think that student needs academic support. And then the third is that students are missing assignments or not turning in assignments. So those are the three reasons that you can select in there. If there is an academics concern, if you choose that alert, the student will automatically get an email that lets them know what academic supports are available and gives them the information they need to log in or to access the tutoring and online writing support directly. Again, providing regular office hours. If you have TAs and the ability to connect your TAs to smaller groups of students to reach out throughout the rest of the semester, that's an excellent strategy to use. And then I mentioned at the beginning that the Keep Learning website is a place where we are updating information regularly on supports that are available to students, including things like, you know, there's a page called Tips on Learning. And on that site, there are a couple of videos that I've posted on there to provide students with some additional tips. There's some information on how to stay engaged, how to stay healthy. So the kinds of things that may or may not be directly related to the course, but are certainly related to students' overall health and well-being as they move through this transition. So I encourage you to share that information with students as well. If you have students who are struggling with other issues that are not related to those three areas that you can select for us or are not technological, the Center for Student Assistance in Student Affairs, as part of the Dean of Students Office, has a hotline and an email that they're checking regularly to assist students with whatever concerns they may have. Some of the issues that I brought up today also have been concerns that have been forwarded to me through the Center for Student Assistance. So I definitely encourage you to share that information with your students as well. There's faculty or their staff available on that site Monday throughout the week between the hours of 8 and 4:30, and we're hoping to extend those, get those hours extended over the next several weeks. And then lastly, because a lot of students are expressing concerns and anxiety, counseling and consultation is another support resource that's available for students, and they have moved to online appointments. So this is again, if you have students who are just completely freaking out, and at this point they just really need to talk to someone, then they can schedule an online or a phone appointment with someone from counseling and consultation services to talk through some of those details and concerns. A couple of other things that will be coming soon that might be helpful for you to direct students to. There is a Keep Engaging site that will be the third of the Keep sites. This will give students an opportunity to see how they can, if they want to continue to engage in other kinds of things. And then there will be some information also on things like virtual workouts and things like that that students can take advantage of to keep themselves healthy as they're navigating this transition. Yes, Ted, you are absolutely right. The freshmen, so the class of 2023, when I look at the site and I see the kinds of concerns that they are having, they are probably the class that is having the most difficult time transitioning, from what I can tell so far. I can't say that emphatically, but from what I can tell so far, you know, given that these are freshmen, this is only their second semester of college, they still are trying to transition and figure this environment out, and now they are sort of faced with this transition as well. So I think the number one thing is just to continue to recognize that that the underlying issue really for many of them is fear of this transition, fear of not having the connection to you as faculty, fear of missing the material, and frankly, lots of concerns related to final grades and things that will roll out at the end of the semester. And so much as you can provide comfort to them as they go, and as much as we can also provide comfort to you as you transition, we're certainly here and available. As the survey that we sent out is actually available until Tuesday for students, and so after Tuesday we should have an even better sense for what some of the other issues are that students are having troubles with. Yeah. How, so Ted asked, how are we going to support them for retention to get them back in the fall? Well, Ted, I think we're doing everything that we can to stay connected to their comments and respond quickly. I've been on the phone all day, every day, trying to reach out to students who have had concerns or who are really worried about the technology. I think the best that we can do is, one, create an environment in the non-face-to-face classroom that is supportive and flexible and recognizes the diversity of students who are on the other end of the computers, and even their diversity of access and ability to navigate this transition. So I think that maintaining that level of flexibility will be critical. And it's not necessary, being flexible doesn't mean reducing standards, but in this situation, it is a circumstance where we are asking a lot of you, and we are asking a lot of our students, and that flexibility will create an equitable situation for all of the students in your class. So I think that's going to make a big deal, or be a big deal. And actually, Stephanie said it well too. The connection that you make to your students is important. Checking in with them, recognizing that it's really not business as usual. And so if there are opportunities for you to connect with them, if there's a discussion board that you can create just for students to express their concerns, to join each other in your classroom and express concerns or challenges, that's another strategy you could potentially use. But at the end of the day, as long as we keep our students at the center of everything that we're doing, and that we don't create, sometimes in the online environment, it's very tempting to do lots of new and innovative things. And in most cases, we want that when we're creating an online environment purposefully. In this case, the circumstance requires us to transition. So the simpler, the better. The more detailed that you make the course, the more challenging it may be for students to transition into this new modality. And other than that, I mean, as long as if you utilize that Navigate ad hoc alert, that would be really helpful. Share it with your colleagues. If students are saying they have concerns or you have concerns, go ahead and issue that alert, and we will make sure that someone follows up with those students to reach out to them. Oh, great. Ted, I'm glad that you did the discussion board. I had another faculty member who did that and found it to be really and was able to actually bring some of the concerns to the administration, whether it's in the college or at the university level, to say these are things that students are saying. So you are on the front lines with the students, and so where you're seeing concerns, please share them with us or your chair, or with your dean or associate deans, so that we can try and resolve them quickly. Good question. So I end with this statement. We always talk about, and my training is in higher education administration, student development. We always talk about putting students at the center. And when we do that, we ask questions like, how will this change impact their ability to be successful? Will every student have access to this information in the same way? How might this be interpreted? How might this make a student feel in this situation? And so putting the students at the center, I think, is important in the design. And as you transition through these last, 6 weeks or so, making, again, being as flexible as possible. The administration, I guarantee you, is having multiple conversations about policies that impact students, and some of which we've already made some movements on. So, for example, all of the holds that students had on their accounts have been removed, so that we don't have that as a barrier to their registration for the fall. So that's another way, Ted, that we're really trying to make sure that we reduce and remove barriers. It's a challenging situation, but for those of you who might have an interest in health, recognize I always, my background in my PhD is in community health, and my research was on stress. And so when when we see things that as a threat, we respond differently than when we see things as a challenge. And when we see things as a challenge, we see the opportunities that might exist in that. And so even in this really challenging time, we're seeing a lot of opportunities and ways in which we're learning business that we didn't think we could. So I think that's an upside, and in some ways it may also be teaching our students a different way of engaging with us as well. But through that process, we just want to make sure that we are as supportive as possible. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that you'll utilize those resources, use those alerts. And if you want to know any more information about things that we're hearing along the way, I'm happy to share that at another time. Once the survey is done, I can come back and share that information again. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Well, first, just a big thank you, a round of applause to Renique for sharing this with us today. It's great to hear some of the concerns that you're seeing, that the institution is seeing from students broadly, as well as how NIU is rallying to support our students.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful opportunity to see how powerful our collaborative efforts can be in having an impact on students. So thank you all for what you're doing to try and to help support our students. Thank you. All right, so I think I'll just throw out actually right here in the box, just in case if you do want to follow up or you have other questions, throwing out my email there. I'm also, I don't know if you all have been using Teams, but I'm loving Microsoft Teams. I never really used it before. So again, another way that business will change for me after this, but I'm happy to, to get on the phone call with you through Teams or chat with you via email if you have questions or concerns or other kinds of exciting things that you're doing in your class that might be useful to share with others. I welcome that.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today. And good luck. Best wishes as you continue to support our students and keep teaching.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie.